I'm Jonathan Watt with the Tara Group International. We hope you're enjoying the material that we are posting, and if you are and want to join and support our mission, please press the like button and subscribe to our channel. Got an interesting one today in our series on church history. We're calling it Jonah in a Pagoda, the story of Nestorian Christianity and the art of faithful translation in the Tang era in China. One of the most thoughtful questions we received in response to our earlier discussion on Nestorian Christianity in the Tang Dynasty came from a viewer at GGDIVHJKLJL who asked, "Why didn't you mention the pagoda with an icon of Jonah in it?" That's a worthwhile question, and one that opens a deeper window into how Christianity took root not only in China, but also in cultures far beyond its Mediterranean origins. Even just the presence of biblical imagery, such as Jonah, with Chinese architectural forms like pagodas, is not a historical curiosity or a theological footnote, but it's evidence of a sophisticated incarnational Christianity that understood translation not merely as linguistic work, but as cultural and symbolic theology. Christianity actually arrives in the Tang era in China during the dynasty that lasted from roughly 618 to 907 through the Church of the East, which is often labeled Nestorian Christianity in Western scholarship. In the year 635, the missionary Alapin arrives in the Tang capital of Chang'an, which is modern-day Xi'an. And the faith he represented came from Syriac-speaking Christian communities rooted in Persia and Mesopotamia, not from Rome or Byzantium, as we might otherwise have expected. Chinese sources referred to this faith as Jingjiao, meaning the luminous religion. The name itself reflects how Christianity was interpreted through existing Chinese philosophical categories, involving things like light and harmony and cosmic order, rather than through the more common Greco-Roman frameworks by themselves. So the pagoda as Christian space, really? Pagodas were among the most recognizable religious structures in China. Associated primarily with Buddhism, pagodas functioned as sites for sacred texts and relics and meditation, and symbolized the connection between heaven and earth. And when Jingjiao Christians adopted the pagoda form, they were not disguising Christianity, but speaking it fluently into Chinese visual language. So Christian communities did not insist on basilicas or Western church forms. Instead, they embedded Christian symbols like crosses, inscriptions, and other biblical imagery within architectural forms already understood as sacred in that Chinese culture. So this approach allowed Christianity to be perceived not as a foreign threat, but, if you will, as a legitimate spiritual path within the Tang religious ecosystem. But now the question, why Jonah? The choice of Jonah as a visual motif in that setting is rather telling. You see, long before Christianity reached China, Jonah was a favored figure in early Christian theology. So in Syriac Christianity, for example, Jonah gets symbolized as representing death and resurrection, repentance and divine mercy, and God's compassion for outsiders, especially when one might not have expected it. Jesus himself explicitly connected Jonah's 3 days in the depths of the fish to his own death and resurrection. You can read about that in Matthew chapter 12, verse 40. And this made Jonah a powerful shorthand for the gospel message. So in a Chinese context, Jonah's descent and restoration resonated with existing religious themes that involved cycles of loss and then return, moral transformation, and harmony that was restored after chaos. So rather than requiring extensive explanation, Jonah's story could be recognized intuitively, making it an ideal bridge symbol for cross-cultural theology, as a number of scholars have suggested. So what's the evidence from texts and artifacts? While no single artifact definitively labeled the Jonah Pagoda survives intact, scholars have identified multiple indicators that biblical imagery, including Jonah, circulated within Tang-era Christian art and teaching. And stone carvings, murals, and inscriptions reveal a blending of Syriac Christian symbols with Chinese artistic conventions. The most famous textual witness remains the Nestorian stela, which was erected in 781, stela meaning a standing stone with an inscription on it, which documents over a century of Christian presence in China. The stela describes Christian doctrine using Buddhist and Taoist vocabulary, but also demonstrating how deeply Jingjiao Christians engaged the intellectual world as it was around them. Fascinating story there. So artistic expressions such as crosses rising from lotus flowers reinforce this pattern. And so Jonah imagery fits squarely with this visual theology, deeply Christian and yet unmistakably local to that culture. So it was not synchronism, but cultural faithfulness. Modern readers sometimes mistake adaptations for theological compromise. Yet what we see in Tang China is not a dilution of Christianity, but a confident expression of it. And the Church of the East carried a high Christology, sacramental theology, and a robust biblical tradition. What changed was the form, not the faith that was being expressed. So Jonah in a Pagoda communicates resurrection hope just as clearly as Jonah on a Roman catacomb. The differences lie in the audience, not the doctrine, and early Christians in China understood something that contemporary churches are still relearning. The gospel must be translated, not merely transplanted. Now, why this story still matters is this. The question raised by our viewer matters because it pushes us beyond simplified narratives of Christian history. And Christianity did not arrive in Asia as a Western religion. It arrived early, creatively, and dialogically, and often centuries before colonial European expansion had taken place. So for today's global church, the Pagoda and Jonah stand as reminders that faithful Christianity has always been culturally embedded. And theology lives not only in texts, but also in symbols and in spaces and in stories that speak to hearts of real existing communities. Would you like some further reading, especially that's available on Amazon for readers who want to explore the topic more deeply? Some works that offer some reliable historical and theological grounding include A History of Christianity in Asia by S.H. Moffett, A History of Christianity in Asia Volume 1, specifically the beginnings to 1500, available from Maryknoll Books, Maryknoll, New York, and Orbis Books, and also the work Christianity in China, S.H. Moffett once again in 2005, Christianity in China, Early Protestant Missionary Writings, also from Orbis Books. We'd like to continue the conversation with you. This block was inspired by the thoughtful comments of our viewer, and we're grateful for viewers who help deepen the conversation by asking perceptive historical and theological questions. And at Atara Group International, we believe learning happens best in community, through dialogue, curiosity, and shared reflection on the global story of faith. So if this post has sparked a question or an insight or a challenge of your own, We would love to hear from you. Join the conversation. Share your perspective. Help us continue uncovering the rich global history of Christianity. Let's do so together. Some of the works cited here include that by L.W. Brown and others. We hope you enjoy the reading.